And welcome back to another episode of Ronin's Den. I am Duality Complex, your host. I'm here with my friend, the Dragon X again, and our other friend, Michael St Gregory.
That's me.
We're going to talk about failure in games and dice systems. What we like about them, what we want to see in them, and how they influence the games that we play. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Michael to start. And yeah.
I love failure. I've known failure most of my life, so I'm familiar with it. But in games, I love it even more. I think that there is such an opportunity to make a success out of failing your intention, meaning that you can make a success in the story and in the narrative and for your character progression by basically adhering to the loss, like taking the L and letting it advance your own story, advance the story. You know, there's no losing in a game, you know, for the most part, until your character is either completely gone from existence or you've just ruin the world that you inhabit. There's no real way to lose in these types of games. So I always like embracing those moments and letting it kind of like having it. They're almost more exciting to me to see what happens when I fail than it is to succeed on an intention.
Depends on the system for me.
That's true.
If I'm playing D&D, I hate failure. Like, I realize...
No, I love it.
Like, I see that you can make fun stories out of it, but you can also make fun stories out of succeeding. And I feel like there's nothing mechanically interesting about failure in D&D. And I've said this story in a TikTok before, but I had a buddy by the name of John. Now, I'm aware that this is a statistical impossibility. I am fully aware of this. And we have discussed this at length, all of my friends and John. He was polymorphed into a great ape. A giant ape, which gives you 2 fist attacks. He was hasted, which gave him a 3rd attack. And he had advantage, and he missed 8 rounds in a row. He never got a single hit the entire combat. Now, I don't care what story you make out of that.
Amazing.
The only good thing that came out of it is now we make fun of him. and people are like, try different dice. We're throwing him different dice. And he'll roll his dice and he just slams the table. He's like, this is impossible. I don't know. Now, tell that guy... Tell that guy that failure is fun. He's going to tell you to F off. But it is. So I think a little bit of failure can be good, but like in a system that failure is just bad, it can get old real quick.
Well, so just out of curiosity, how hard was that test to hit?
He needed to roll a 15 or higher.
Ouch.
Statistically, it just seems like impossible.
No, we've sat there and we've talked about it. We are all like,
that's
the amount of
dream.
Like the amount of dice he rolled to not get over 15 a single time. It's incredible. And he was rolling 2 at a time. The advantage.
That's a probability wonder.
Everybody I tell that story to, they're like, you're lying. I'm like, I wish I was lying. I wish I could make something this stupid up. I wish I could, but I'm not that smart.
Oh, we know.
But, so, when I look at a system, I want a system that is going to give me a little bit of a boost from failure, as well as a story. So, Sunday night, we play Masks. And when you fail, you mark experience. Or potential, I think is what it's called. So, when you fail, not only does it give you like a list of things that can happen, which you don't have to stick to those, but it gives you a list of here are some ideas of how to make the story interesting, and you get more powerful. So in the future, you don't suck as much and you don't fail as much. And I like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I saw that in Monster of the Week when you were running that. Every time you got a failure, mark off an experience box. Every so many, you got your level up from it. But
Yeah.
I also
I
don't
love
like
that because you legitimately then turn it into a learning experience for your character. When something goes wrong, they get experience from it because basically what you're saying is, oh, okay, I shouldn't do it that way. So I should try it a different way, or at least now I know how to do it properly. Like in the mind of the character, like that's how you can like justify the failure and how they're gaining experience from it.
Yeah. Or another system like Call of Cthulhu, when you fail a skill check, you prime it, and at the end of the session, you roll a die, and that's how much it goes up. So basically, the more you use a skill, the better you get at it, which is kind of reflective of how it works in real life. So that's another one that I'm very happy with.
Yeah. And kids on bikes, like we were just talking before it recorded, when you fail, you get a point that you can use to help in the future succeed a number that you need to reach and a difficulty. So you're getting rewarded both ways for it. And I would love to see somebody try and figure out a mechanic for that for a 5e type game. I'm sure there are like people who have thought of like really smart like homebrew rules for that, but I've yet to be able to figure out myself how you could do that other than like luck points that you could award to do kind of the same thing that Kids on Bikes does, where you can use that to bump up only by one at a time. So I don't know. I feel like there's potential out there so that your friend wouldn't have to go through that nightmarish hell every single time.
Yeah. So I don't know if you followed Tales of the Valiant, which is Kobold Press's
Yes,
5e.
I'm quite familiar with it, actually.
I haven't actually looked at it, but somebody told me they have a luck system in there
They
for
do,
when you
actually,
roll the
yeah.
dice and you fail, you mark a luck, and you can have up to 5, and it's like
Right.
you add it to your roll. Is that how that worked?
Yeah, it's a 1-to-1 for your points. So again, like if the DC was 15 and I had a luck point, but I only rolled 14, I could bump it up, and that would make it a success. There's lots of stuff that you could do with that, which I'm going to be experimenting once the books come, and I'm able to play test a little bit more with what I've already got. And I feel like you could also do something. I've thought of a mechanic called pushing your luck, where if you were to get a certain amount, or rather, if you use a certain amount of luck points after a certain amount of time, there is a consequence to that, because you are literally pushing your luck and getting this wave of success. So something has to kind of counteract that, so that you as a player kind of know the balance of when to use the luck and when to withhold, so that if you want to push your luck, you can risk a misfortune, or you can be successful with like a great success. And I think that like making it a game of chance for really like putting a risk and reward system in place could be beneficial. And I love any type of system that actually plays with risks and rewards. I mean, that's why the wild magic system has always been my favorite for sorcerers, because I can, do all these amazing great things, but because of the very essence of my magic, if I try too hard as a sorcerer, I could accidentally turn somebody into a plant. Like I love any kind of thing where there are consequences where success is, take for instance, have either of you ever played Honey Heist?
No.
No, sadly, I've heard
Okay.
good things.
Honey Heist is so simple but very effective with this kind of risk reward, where an action you're always start in the middle of a meter that can either go too human or too much bear, and if you go too human, you lose your sense of identity for animal and can't do certain things. But if you go too bear, you lose your humanity of sorts and then can't do things that a human would do. So you're always kind of trying to make decisions that balance towards the middle. And if you fail, you'll go one way with your actions, and if you succeed, you go the other way, or whatever it may be. So I like consequences for things to happen with that, and I think that some systems are really, really good with that, and others could potentially have that. I never want to say that they're all bad, like, but there was one that you guys were talking about before that you said was just bad.
Yeah. Well, I think my biggest issue with the Wild Magic Sorcerer, let's talk about that one, the consequences,
Sure.
is I found that it almost never comes up unless the DM and you come up with a way to make it go off more often.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So I know, like, I had a Wild Magic Sorcerer in one of my games, and we had to make the roll, because it's like, if you use Tides of Chaos, the DM can decide to have a Wild Magic Surge go off whenever they want,
Right.
but you get Tides of Chaos back. So what I said was, if you use Tides of Chaos, the very next spell you have is Wild Surging. So the
Right.
player basically could control when they surged or not. And I found that made it almost happen too much, but I liked it because it was just so random. But then it's only 20 things, and I'm like, that's not enough. So I found a chart that had 100, and I'm like, okay, I like this a lot better.
Yeah.
And
The player's handbook for Wild Magic is very, very limited. I found so many more interesting D100 tables that are player created. What we did for an Eberron game that I was running, the woman I had playing a Wild Magic Sorcerer, we put the rule that anytime she used a spell past first level, she would have to roll percentile. But we thought about that and it was like, then you're never really getting Wild Magic enough. So instead she had to roll against her spell DC. So if she didn't beat it, the magic was insane. But then as higher levels, it becomes more like I'm controlling it more. So we had a lot of fun in those first couple of levels where she just could not beat her own spell DC because there was no modifier to add to it at the time. And it was just, it was great, like, just seeing, because then the character had, like, this crisis of, I wish that I could control this thing that naturally is happening to me, but as many good things as I want to do, I can't. The player, however, was like, this is so much fun, I'm going to keep pushing it because I want to see what happens.
We did a die 3 in one of my games, so you had a third of the time you would have a surge.
Yeah.
Just roll your die 3. If it comes up on a 1, you're surging. If not, spell goes off okay. And that felt random enough, but still not enough.
yeah.
There should be, like, some sort of universal rule that they could have made by now. Because, again, like, and this is the other thing, like, everybody does have their own rules when it comes to failing. I know that when a game that I've played, a 5e game that I've been playing with friends for like a couple of years now, when we talk about failure, and I pick this up from him as a GM, he always asks us, what's your intention? And instead of, what do you want to do? Like, or what are you doing? So when we would say, like, well, when I do this, I intend to have this happen. So this way he knows if we fail, it doesn't necessarily like become cataclysmic, or it's just like, well, no, doesn't happen. It's more of like, okay, well, maybe it happens, but not in the way you want it to. So there's like a way to like, as a GM, you can like take it at face value and just say, doesn't happen, or you can be like, well, it didn't go the way you thought it would, because then you could do like the whole if then thing, where if this happens, then this will happen.
I kind of wish, though, that I like, back to the system thing, I like a system that kind of gives you guidance there. Because not everybody is as quick at figuring something out. So I wish their like systems would have like dedicate a couple pages to like, this is how you can make failure interesting. So if this happens, this happens. Like, some guidance there would be nice. And I feel one of the ones that doesn't do that well is 5th edition. And like, it's very much, like I said, failure is just failure unless the DM puts a lot of work into it. And I don't...
Right. It's like combat simulation, basically. Yeah. That's all really it boils down to for that.
You know, 5th edition
which people get mad when you say that, but...
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, that's how it started. I'm not, like, that's how the whole game started. And that's a whole other debate of like, you know, that's a whole other topic, and I could run down that rabbit hole, but you know, whatever.
Well, good news is we don't really set to a specific format. We just kind of let our thoughts trail here.
No, Dragon said that we have to follow he wants instructions enlisted, so you better send them to him because we need to know every topic, every single thing. He will not fail this podcast.
But, I mean, yeah, every system handles failure a bit differently, but D&D is one of those ones that it's binary. It's pass-fail, period. Every single check, either you get it or you don't. One of the systems that I like, and I take the there's this mechanic called extended tests from Shadowrun. And I like to take that mechanic and implant it into any game that it actually will work for. And it works for 5e as well. So you have a thing that you want to do, like, say, pick a lock on a door. Well, it's a really hard lock, so you have to get 30. You have to hit a DC of 30. And every time you roll the dice, you have a number of hits in that game. So 5 or 6s on the dice. That's a hit. Well, you may not get all the hits necessary in a single roll. You might have to make multiple rolls, and you have an interval in the game for as far as, you know, it takes 5 minutes per attempt. So your failure can actually add more dramatic effect or narrative issues pop up while you're attempting to get into this thing. It's not like, oh, you failed to pick the lock, can't try it again, you're done. 5e is like, no, you're done. Lock's unpickable for you until you gain a level. You can just keep building successes up in Shadowrun until you get there.
And that's exactly why I liked Monster of the Week, because there's you literally can have mixed success and mixed failure, meaning they're not black and white. They are the gray areas of what, you know, you intend to do and what could happen, which I think needs to be something more regularly use. Like the Quest RPG has something that it's only D20 roll. So 1 obviously instant failure, 20 best success. In between, though, there are levels, like between 2 and 10 is the equivalent of a mixed success, but it's called tough choice. And basically you're telling your player it didn't go the way you wanted it to, so you can either go this way or you can follow through with this failure. So you kind of like give them options in regards to it didn't immediately fail just terribly, but it's not going to go the way you wanted to originally, so you're going to have to think now again for a follow-up strategy. And I like that having options to failure is another way of like being able to be rewarded for it, because again, it just doesn't halt your game or your, you know, because or any type of game where there's turn-based, you're not thinking like, oh, how I just got to wait for my next turn and then I'll try again. No, now you're like, okay, well, that didn't work that way, but maybe I can try it again at a different angle. That's what I think.
I get it. Well,
what do you guys
also,
think
Quest
of...
RPG is great for people who have never played a game before and don't want to be intimidated by a lot of rules. It only uses one dice, and it has point system for actions.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you
Quest
think about
RPG.
automatic
Really
success?
open-ended as well.
What do you think about automatic
it was,
success and failure?
I think that those should only happen for combat, in my opinion. I've done that. That's been my rule for 5e, where 1s and 20s are only automatic when it's combative. But with skill checks, you can go past 25 on a difficulty level. You can go to 30, all the way up to 30. So you get a natural 20, great. Plus what? Because that's going to determine, like, if you can't just, like... I feel like there's, like, it kind of lowers the work that you're putting in for your character's skill set if you, the player, become lucky. In that sense. So, like, I think that there is... I never called a nat 1 on a skill check as a failure, because maybe it's just DC 10 and their modifier allows them, maybe they have a +9. So, there you go. Or maybe they have a skill that allows them to not roll lower than such and such a number. So, I think that's okay to do that. But combat, it's like you miss or you hit.
Man, you're bringing back memories, because it was about a year ago that I had this big debate on TikTok over this very topic. Where
oh God, that's right. I am so sorry for opening up that again.
me as a DM, me as a game master. If you cannot succeed, you're not rolling the dice. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that too.
Like,
that too.
If this is an impossible task, I'm not going to say roll the dice and waste our time.
Right.
If it is so low and I know you have like a +10, I'm just going to say you succeed. And there were people that got belligerently mad at me for saying that. Like, how dare you say something like that? Like, what?
You know what that is? That's honestly because there's two things that I think are the most mitigating factors for that. One is that they subscribe to the instant success, instant failure on skill checks as well. Two, they just really love rolling dice.
Which, I mean, I get that people have their dice and they want to roll them. I want to roll my dice too. I get it. But like I said, I had one particular instance where my buddy Steele was running a game for us, and my character found this ancient tome. And I instantly latched onto it. My wizard wants to read this tome. He wants to decipher it. I'm like, what do I have to do to decipher this tome? He goes, roll an Arcana check. I had a +12, and I rolled a nat 20, so a 32, and he goes, yeah, you can't decipher it. Well, then why the fuck did I roll these dice? Why? Well, just say you can't decipher it. Well, then after the game, I'm like, Steele, what's going on with this tome? He goes, oh, it was just flavor, and I don't know why you're interested in it. I'm like, because when a character or a player shows a little bit of interest in something, Steele, you're supposed to run with it. Even if you don't have anything planned for it, just say, I don't know yet. Or, like, I've had players pick up something and they're like, what do I got to do this? I will get back to you on that. Or your character doesn't know yet. You have to find someone who can help you or show you. That creates a role play moment for them in the future, and it's me going,
He could have also like easily just turned it into a gag if he wanted to, where it's like you take your time, you look through the clues, you try to figure out the codex of it, and eventually you break the seal and you realize this is the most guarded family recipe for cornbread you've ever seen. Like, you could just like have fun with that because at least you're being rewarded for it, but also, okay, so that was a bit of a red herring. That's cool, but at least we had like a fun moment out.
Not just, yeah, I don't know why you're interested in that.
Because you brought it up, dude. Like, you can't just...
My character is a lawful evil wizard whose sole goal is to gain enough power to put his family on the throne. That was literally my character's motivation. He literally wanted to gain enough power that he could walk into the throne room, tell the king, my family is the royal family now, obliterate the king, and nobody would ask any questions. Of course, an ancient magical tome is going to be something he's interested in. Like, that was literally all my character's motivation. He wanted to gain power to put his family on the throne.
That's a lesson for all you DMs out there. Do not dangle a carrot you do not want your players to chase.
Right. And the part that irritated me is like I said, why am I rolling the dice if you know that you're not going to do anything with it? Like, and I get you put it there for flavor, but read
that's
the
not
room.
Flavor.
Read the room, man. Read the room. When you've got, like, I put tapestries and stuff for, like, flavor for descriptions of my rooms. Not an ancient tome on the table. Okay, I'm interested in that. No, so that's why the auto success and the auto failure doesn't. I mean, it bothers me to an extent, but I also feel, or like someone brought up levels of success and levels of failure. So maybe my 32, I couldn't decipher what was in the tome, but at least maybe like you realize that this is familiar works of a wizard that you read about when you were a kid or at the academy, and maybe going back to their works would help you, giving you something, anything, like just give me a little nugget. I don't even need it to, like, I didn't expect to understand the whole tome in a one check.
Even just,
you know,
like,
what's also
what the
okay?
language is.
Pausing the game and saying, all right, give me a moment. Everybody take like a little break. I'm going to go figure this out.
Yeah.
That should be more normalized in home games, I feel like. If your DM does not have, if you are a DM and you get stuck, feel free to tell the players, all right, time out. I'm going to go figure out what this thing is because I didn't have anything actually planned for you to succeed on it. So when we come back, I'll have that answer.
Well, and not to rag on my buddy Steele. I love Steele, but we got through like 10 sessions with him and everybody fired him and put me back in the DM chair. So
That's bad.
like, and the thing is,
that's rough.
It was his first time DMing, and they're like, "No, you need some work." And I didn't say a word. Like, I didn't lead that charge at all. They're just like, "You're fired, Steve. You're running again." I'm like, "Oh God,
yikes!"
Well, then he started asking me questions and like wanted to know like how I did certain things. That I kind of like tried to help him a little bit, and finally he's like, "I want to try running again." I'm like, if you can convince everybody else to let you try again, I'm okay with it. Well, he tried again, and we got through a mini campaign. But at the end, he's like, "Do you guys want to keep going?" And they're like, "No, we want Steve back." And I'm like, he's like, "Well, did I do any better?" And we're like, "Yeah, you did a little better, Steele."
Total lies.
Yeah, well,
now I'm curious,
I mean,
what was he doing?
Well, we're on a tangent, but every NPC was the same character. They were all mean, they were all high, and you never like, I don't know, like it's hard to describe, what was going on, like there was no story we were following. Like we were basically doing whatever we could get him to do. Like he would put something in front of us, we'd latch onto it, and then it would die right there. And then after the session, he's like, "I can't believe you guys didn't pick up on this. The line there." And at one point, I'm like, "Steele, how were we supposed to pick up on that?" And he's like, "Well, blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Steele, you never said any of that in the session." "I didn't." "No, buddy, we have no clue what's going on right now." He's like, "Oh, I'll try to do better next week." And next week came and no better. And like,
there's something that I've seen Abria Iyengar do in her shows where if something doesn't happen, but it's kind of important to kind of be out there, she'll go, "So what you didn't see is," and it's kind of like you're forcing your players not to metagame at that point, which I think is a fun challenge. But also you're letting them know that something is happening behind the scenes, even if you're only getting like the briefest of glimpses of it. It lets you as the player know, okay, so even though I know about it, but my character doesn't, I feel like eventually I know that eventually that's going to come around again as some sort of importance or plot point or whatever it may be. I have yet to figure out how to do it myself without like completely spoiling things. But because that's the thing, I'm a lore guy. If somebody ever like gets like really good history checks or something like that, I'm like, well, here you go.
I use them kind of like in-game cutscenes. Meanwhile, what's going on with the NPCs that you're not there for? And that's how I can kind of give the players a little bit of a progression on events that they're not present for, but their actions have impacted. So they're taking too long to do something, or they manage to get something done really quickly. So they kind of have an idea of what the stakes are behind the scenes.
So one of the things I've found, and it sounds weird to say it, but every player wants a sandbox game until they're in a sandbox game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do nothing, and they're like, "Well, what are we supposed to do?" Well, there's a bunch of adventure hooks. Which one do you want to go after? Well,
right.
Which one are we supposed to go after? I sometimes find putting the people on the rails is not as bad as they make it out to be. Like I said, every player wants a sandbox until they're in a sandbox, and then they want to be on rails. Even if they don't know they want to be, I feel like a little structure is a good thing.
The way that I've always seen it is that it is okay for the players to all start on the same train that is going down one path, and then you give them multiple junctions to divert from and let them choose which way the train is going next. So at least you're still all on the same path, but you have decided which direction now the train is going.
That's I think that's a skill a lot of DMs.
And then you destroy the chain.
Well, and I think another issue with my buddy Steele was he would see us grasping onto something, and I don't think he knew how to divert to that. So in one of my games, we were doing something, and the players heard about this orphanage. And they became instantly enamored with this orphanage. They wanted to know who ran it. They wanted to know what was going on. It seemed weird for the town they were in. And to me, it was just an ordinary orphanage until they started looking into it. And then I'm like, okay, there's something more to this orphanage. I don't know what it is yet. But by them coming up with ideas, eventually I'm going to hear something and be like, that's it.
Oh, yeah. I've stolen from my players the most amazing ideas, and then they're like, I knew that was what you had in mind. I'm like, yes, what I had in mind, sure.
and that's part of being a DM is latching on to what your players want and going with it. And how did we get on this topic from dice systems?
Well, no, because I was actually going to turn it around of as a DM or game master, or whatever term you want to use. When you see that your players are not reaching their goal because they keep failing, it is okay to move it forward or put it in front of them by some means. Basically what I'm saying is you can fudge the story for them to get the success but you don't have to say that was necessarily what you intended. Like if they hit every trap in a dungeon and they're like nearly dead, you can let them die and then they got because of the magic of this place, they're in some sort of resurrection pit and now they're back to full health and they can start over. Like the I had this once where it was bandits, the typical trope of sleeping at camp, bandits trying to steal from them. They were their roles were so bad and ineffective that I literally had the bandits just go, I don't think this group is worth it. I feel bad. Like we turned it into a gag where it's like, oh, this is the most pathetic group of adventurers I've ever seen. And then the bandits then became like helpful allies. Like, so actually, where were you trying to go? Because we know like a shortcut and we can help you get there.
You obviously need our help.
Yeah, you need our help. Like, you're new at this, aren't you? The thing is, it's not like any of them were inexperienced players or just like, it was just, they did not have chance on their side.
Once again, the dice. The
Yes.
freaking dice. Sometimes, like I said, you as a DM flipped that failure into an interesting story point.
Yeah.
There are a lot of game masters out there, DM, GM, I say game, I switch it internet, I'd switch it, whatever. There are a lot of them out there who don't know how to do that or can't think on the fly like that. And that's where I kind of wish, like we had the discussion in the Discord last week where we were talking about like how I like when systems have stuff built into them that give you guidance, where D&D doesn't, because not everybody is as skilled at improv. Like I did theater basically my whole life. So to me, changing a beat like that is nothing. But to other people, aka my buddy Steele, he's never going to do that. So
I think that's what it has inspired so many other developers to create a mechanic that rewards failure, like gaining experience when you don't achieve something, or being able to use a point that you get from failing in order to boost up something for another success. Because those kinds of things are necessary when a GM doesn't have the ability to turn a success or a failure around. I've even seen fun interactive elements, which streams where they allow the chat to kind of like reward bonus points to a player to boost up a success or whatever, but they also give it to the GM so that they can switch a success around and turn it into a failure just to kind of like fuck with people. And I think sometimes like that, like tiny elements like that can be fun for when you are, because it's not GM versus players, but there are instances where you can make it that way but still make it fun, because the GM, while they're running a battle or running some sort of like opposition, they want to succeed as well. But I kind of like also, I'm not superstitious, but I am fascinated with probability. And yet I wonder how much of it is projection and how much of it is just probability when the dice tell the story for you. Because sometimes, man, it's just, you look at it like, you didn't want me to succeed until this moment when it's needed most. Or I had a very big decision that I was so sure was going to be easy, and then just, much like life, it thrown back in my face because I got too cocky.
Yeah, okay. So my little brother plays D&D with me. What you just described, basically, the success and the failures dictate the story, right? So he had a character that made all the wrong decisions, and he didn't do anything. Well, he was at the site of where a character was, like, an NPC was offed, and he's there, and the guards show up. They see him with a weapon in hand. Instantly, the guards start interrogating him. Well, he's innocent, right? All he has to do is cooperate with them. He tried to run and failed. They catch him. They take him to the jail cell. They start to interrogate him, and he's trying to persuade them because he didn't do it, and he fails. So they don't believe him. Well, luckily the party shows up, and they're like, listen, one of us is a noble. I'll take him under, like, I'll take him. We'll watch him. Well, he gets out, and they don't give him back his weapons. Well, he goes to the captain of the guard and wants to get a magical weapon out of the vault.
Oh,
now, mind
God.
you, the guard goes like, the captain of the guard's like, so you want me to give you a magical weapon when you're suspected of murder? And he's like, yes. I'm like, okay, this is a persuasion. You gotta convince him, and he failed. Well, I interpreted that as the captain of the guard thought he was being suspicious. It's like, well, I don't like this. We're gonna arrest you again. I don't like this. This is sketchy. Well, then, instead of just cooperating, he decides to kill the captain of the guard. He takes the captain of the guard's weapon and kills him, beats him in a fight. As guards walk in and see him kill the captain of the guard. And I'm like, Q, what is your goal here, buddy? Like, what are you trying to do? He's like, I don't know, I'm leaving town. So he ends up taking out the two guards successfully. Well, as he's about to, like, exit the town, he has another failure and gets caught again. And I'm like, Q, like, how am I supposed to reconcile this? Like, what am I supposed to do here, bud? I don't know, like...
Legitimately had a character have a psychotic breakdown because they could not fathom the idea of being arrested.
And the dice completely dictated that story.
Which is absolute madness.
Like you said, it's this probability thing. When he succeeded at killing the captain of the guard, that was when the dice wanted him to succeed, and every other time he failed, they wanted him to fail. It's like, I don't... And this is one of the things about tabletop role-playing games I love. Like, you couldn't write that. Like, the things that happen in a TTRPG, it just... You couldn't write that if you tried.
So, with that scenario...
And I think it's a... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, like, with that scenario, how would have... Because it sounds like, it was 5e, it's a binary pass-fail for each one of those checks. How do you think a system that had more of degrees of success and failures would have influenced the outcome of that whole line of events that transpired?
I don't know, because it wasn't in one of those systems. But I feel like it would not have gone as badly so quickly. Like, I feel like it probably still would have ended badly, but there would have been a slower progression. Where this was
like
all...
if he had rolled, like, if it was using Quest and you rolled the tough choice, you as the GM could basically have the captain of the guard just be like, listen, I'm letting you go. If you try to keep going, I'm gonna have to arrest you. It's your choice right now. You've already been freed. Why make this worse for yourself? Or at the same time, you could just like if you got another system where it was mixed success, or rather mixed failure, then it's like, okay, the guard is looking at you like you're crazy. And maybe other people might be taking you away and not just being thrown back in jail. Like there's something to it. Like I think even hearing the terms tough choice or mixed success guides the GM towards like instead of just binary bad good.
Yeah. And
So I understand where you need that, like not in a condescending way, but spelled out for you.
well, it was one of the few times I've ever had like something go that off the rails, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know what to do here, but he's like, it's fine. I'm having fun. I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad you're having fun. Because
You're
like,
having fun.
cause I was at the point where I'm like, Q, do you just want to retcon all of this? He's like, no, I'm loving it. I'm like, okay.
There
Well-
goes the craziest son of a bitch I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, and then like you said with the tough choice thing, that's like, I know we all played Monster of the Week together. In a failure in Monster of the Week, you have choices of what happens.
Yeah.
So in a game like Monster of the Week, if he had failed that, there would have been a set number of choices that he could have picked from that would have happened. That probably would have dictated it in a different route than what happened. Where D&D, I'm just like flying off the top of my head. So
That's why I love tables. I really I love there are tables that you can find of like what happens when someone fails. And you can like legitimately then have them roll again to find out, hey, here's what happens now.
Have you looked at the reaction tables from older editions when trying to figure out things like that? You know, like the old reaction and charisma modifier tables, Dragon?
I have not.
I might recommend that just as like a high level look, but you definitely want to do quite a bit of tweaking with it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
I feel like these kinds of systems can benefit from a little bit more assistance for, like you were saying, like as if you had something that you could just go to immediately and know like, okay, when this happens, when someone fails a pickpocketing, you have this kind of choice of what could result. And you as the DM can like roll to see, oh, this is what it lands on, and then oh, okay, so it turns out it was you weren't pickpocketing an old lady, it was someone who was actually trying to steal from someone else, and they were a con artist, like, so
Or like another one with a pickpocket thing. I think a chart would be cool because maybe one of them said, like if you roll, one of them is you actually succeed in pickpocketing it, but someone else saw you do it. And
Right.
now they're going to extort you for that. They're going to be like, listen, if you and I know what
Right.
you did. Me, and the captain of the guard could know what you did unless you do
Right.
this. So like,
or they could pickpocket it and like, well, you reach and you feel a similar sized object that you think is a gold watch, and then when you put it back in your pocket, you realize you took, something that's cheap and like, completely not what they've got. So they still fail, even though they thought they succeeded.
yeah. Which that's kind of where like you've said with the partial hit and a partial miss. That's something I really wish 5e developed a little more, because it
Yeah.
would be interesting in that regard as well, where like duality says binary pass fail. It's you either succeed or you don't succeed. And I don't know. I prefer these other games.
I like gray areas. Yeah.
That's one thing I think Shadowrun does very well with their skill checks, extended tests.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to that anytime somebody gives me the opportunity. Yeah, you can pick that lock or fix that engine in 1 or 20 rolls. take as many as you want.
Yeah.
But game time is going
Blades
to
in the
elapse.
Dark has that as well.
I haven't gotten a chance to play. I have it sitting on my
I
shelf
have been
and nobody
listening
wants to
to
run
a
it.
show that plays Blades in the Dark as their main system, and you can, like, your goal is to have at least 1/6 in your rolls, because then that is a success. Because then that's a mixed success. When you get multiple sixes, then it's like, oh, then you're guaranteed. But again, it's a tier of success or failure. Like, it could go it's like you almost got it, but not quite the way you wanted it, or you could have done so much worse.
It's
like, the threat of doing even worse than you already did kind of can give the hint to a player that maybe it's not worth trying at this time.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a
Blades
system
in the
that's
Dark
really
is one I
interesting.
really want to try.
It's a lot of fun.
I want to play ECB, which is a Blades in the Dark type system, but it's like the SCP Foundation in a
Oh,
game.
nice.
And I want to play it really badly, but I can never find people to play it.
Throw a message up in Discord.
I think there's a cyberpunk version called Blade Runners in the Dark, or something along those lines, or like Edge Runners in the Dark or something like that, where Shadowrun. When I've played Shadowrun, it's very much about heists and jobs with magic involved, and every single time, usually what ends up happening was that, oh, the job goes great, but we as people who have these amazing skills and abilities can't help ourselves but make it bigger than it needed to be, thus resulting in stuff that didn't have to happen. But I think it's just because we kind of wanted to be those magnets of chaos to see, like, okay, how much bigger can we make the result of this than it needs to be?
So I ran an introductory game to Shadowrun. I run it for everybody who's never played before and like, oh yeah, I want to give it a try. It's a simple data steal. The information the players need is on a computer in a small office building on a back road, basically, like a truck stop where they park their trailers at the end of the night. All the players need to do is cut the main power coming from the road, and they're free to go. Like, everything's totally good.
Right.
Nothing will happen. There's 2 guards on premises.
One task.
That's it. That's all they legitimately need to do. And it's very easy to find out through the legwork. Oh, yeah. It's almost impossible to fail the check. Yeah, power
Speaking
comes
of light,
from this
Jesus
one
Christ, Steve,
pole.
what's going on with you?
Got some
Trying to
mood
get this
lighting,
back to where it was, and it's not listening.
You look like you're in the middle of a rave.
right?
Sorry.
Fits the Shadowrun theme a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, like, it's an impossible fail bit of legwork. The power comes from the pole. There's one wire that runs to the building, and every time I have run this mission, the person who's playing a hacker type has to do all this extra matrix stuff. The magician's going to do all this other things, and they take this really simple, should just be able to knock the power out, pick a manual lock, just basically your basic skill checks.
Right.
And they notify the police for the next 5 miles because they do some really weird things on the Matrix. They tell too many people what's going on. They cut the power, but they do it in a way that affects way more places than just the building they're going to. No, we're not going to cut that one wire. We're going to go to the beginning of the block and knock out the substation. We're not going to mess around. We're going to make sure there's no power. And the simple task.
It's literally you had one job.
Yeah. And at the end of it, I'm like, so do you guys want me to tell you how that could have gone so much easier and so much quicker? And most of the time they go, yeah.
Here's the result of your hubris.
Well, all you needed to do was cut the power at the pole. And the mage who used that knockout spell on those 2 guards in the gatehouse, same thing. and you would have gotten out scot-free without alerting anybody. I don't know how, but you notified the police, the private security firm, and somehow got another mage involved. Congratulations. I don't know how you did it, but congratulations.
Sounds like a crazy good time to me.
It's such a fun introduction game. It really is. Maybe one day I'll run Shadowrun again, but I'm looking more toward Cyborg right now.
I love the board games. You see that I posted in your Discord the Circus Borg is coming?
I'm getting Pirate Borg.
Me too. I'm going to get it eventually.
And,
But, what else we talking about, boys?
man.
I kind of think we reached the peak.
I think we did. I think we reached the peak on failure in games and how to make it interesting and fun. And some really good examples of why not to have binary pass fail.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely a bunch of good reasons. So,
Listen, pass fail never worked for me in school. It doesn't work for games either.
Man, I
let's
think
not talk about schooling.
yeah, no, thank you, please. and thank
Technical
you.
school, straight A's. High school, 1.6 grade point average.
Yeah.
C's, but I barely.
But
showed
again,
up.
all that time I was in high school, I look back and I'm like, oh, I could have been playing games so much earlier if I didn't think it was too nerdy.
And I'm like, I could have gone to so many more.
No,
parties
that was
if I didn't play
was always
D&D
my
every
thing.
weekend.
For some reason, I don't know why. I was like, I know I'm a nerd, but I'm not that kind of nerd.
I was a worse nerd in high school. I was a card flopper.
Oh God.
Yep, I was a card flopper in high school. Then at 18 years old, I was introduced to D&D, and I'm like, yep, that's my new identity now, tabletop role-playing games. And then I started to realize there were board games other than Monopoly, and I'm like, yep, this is my new life. Started with Settlers of Catan and has gone from there.
You ever play the 1996 or 93? It was early 90s. It was a game called Dragon Strike.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. It was a board game put out by TSR to get people into playing AD&D. It came with a videotape, a VHS, with a dungeon master.
Yes, I heard about this.
Heard of this.
And cutscenes. So as you played the board game, you would pause the game at the table, turn on the videotape, watch up to a certain point. They would tell you to pause the video. You would go back to the board game, and you would go back and forth as you went through the
It
board
was
game.
innovative at the time. It was
was.
really cool.
I'd like to see
And
something.
then one
new
day
like that.
we watched the entire tape.
Yes. Oh, I never got anybody to play the game with me, so I just watched the tape. It was just one of the VHSs that I used to watch when I was a kid.
My favorite card game to play right now is Gloom. Yeah. Is that the... Wait, I'm not sure if I'm thinking about it. But it's basically... you have a character, and then you're each trying to basically... All four of you are playing at the table. You're really trying to betray each other. Like, the whole point is that... but it's a, like, gothic horror vibe to it as well. So you can put curses on other people or use your abilities and your cards to put them on others, and they're these transparent abilities. So you put it and basically are stacking it on top of your single card, and you will see through like each layer how much you have been detrimentally affected or none at all. It's a lot of fun. I think they put out like a Lovecraft expansion set for it too. So if you're
There's
a big
also a
fan
Game
of-
of Thrones one.
Yeah. I've been like on a big cosmic horror kick lately, so I'm definitely I need to play a Call of Cthulhu. Like, I desperately need to play one.
I have Delta
in.
Green that I've been wanting to run for a really long time. So maybe we can do that. It's Call. Have you played or read any Delta Green?
No.
It's Call of Cthulhu, but modern times. So instead of 1920s, it's 90s and 2000s.
I like Chaosium systems of percentile die. Like I was thumbing through their Universal RPG engine that they put out, and you basically can make your own style of a percentile die game. And I there's something about that where the range of success and failure can be like the stakes of it are either so high or not, that if you're, again, like you were saying, Steve, if you're so good at a particular skill, unless it's absolutely necessary because it can change the outcome of the entire story, you shouldn't have to roll for it. And it kind of treats it as such. So I like anything that kind of, respects the abilities of what a player wants to be able to do and use them, until it's like a very high stakes situation.
I really like percentile dice games until I don't. So, like, I love the concept. Like you said, I love that if you've got like a 90 and it's a roll under, you're never really going to fail with that skill. But you've also got skills that are like 30. So if you're rolling that skill, there's a high, like, you suck at that. And you suck. And you're like, this is a big risk. But the game is dictating that I do this. Yeah. But, like I said, you also get that relief because if you fail, you're only going to get better at that skill. And right. Only, like, in real life, the more you do something, the better you get it. So, I
the lesson in all of this, folks, is it's okay to fail.
Yes, it is okay.
It's okay to fail. We endorse failure.
Failure makes for interesting storytelling opportunities and can have just as good of an impact in the game as a success. Sometimes it's even more memorable.
So,
well said.
I'm going to plug my buddy at Happy Jack Games, Jeffrey Baker. He's creating a game called The Crypt Has Opened. And I love...
Oh, yes.
It's the imposition dice system, which is a very, very awesome system. I love it. I think it's innovative. I don't know if any other system uses it. Basically, whatever your character's level is, you get a certain die. Whatever the skill you're trying to use, you get a die. And then you have the imposition die, which is the difficulty of the task you're trying to achieve. You roll all three, and as long as one of your two, either your spell dice or your character die or your skill dice, are higher than your imposition, you succeed. Yeah, that's how it works. It's a really cool system. It's very simple. It's fun. And I love what he's done with failure. What he's done with failure is if you fail, you have this little pie chart that you fill. And when you fill it up, you can use it to change the narrative of the game. So say you're in a situation and you need something. So you're facing a monster that's weak to electricity or something, but there's no way to really shock them. Hey, there's now a fire hydrant there that wasn't there before. So you can spend these failure points that you've built up to make that happen.
Okay.
It's nice. Or you can use it to boost your character, make your character better. Or you can use it to improve your rolls. So if you use enough of them, you can actually boost your roll. And he has a town building mechanic in there. Part of the game is the town that you're trying to rebuild. Because it's an apocalypse and you're trying to rebuild society, you can spend those failures to upgrade your town. So he has actually created a very fantastic system that makes failure very fun, and it's a lot of different things you can do from it. It's not, hey, you get an experience, or hey, you can make this better. You have options once you've built up enough.
And I like that you actually have to think about where you want to use it and when you want to use it, because then it makes those like, oh, I've earned it. Now I know I can upgrade my character. Oh, I really want to use this for, this particular moment, but I'm not quite there. So you have to I love that you have to think about like the consequences.
And I love what he's doing with that game, and I knew I was going to plug it the minute we started talking about failure. Yeah. But it's still in play testing right now. But you can pick it up on itch.io Happy Jack Games, and nice. I highly recommend it. It's going to continue to work on. I think the only thing he still really needs to play test is having people do a full campaign of it. He's only really done one shots, so once he gets that done, it should be releasing, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, see if we can get him on the show to plug his game and tell us about it. That sounds
I'm sure he would if he had the time.
Right? So yeah, I think we've pretty much come full circle around. So does anybody have anything they want to plug, or where we can find you if you have additional information?
Yeah. You can find me on TikTok. Just search for my name, Michael St Gregory. That's pretty much my social handle all over. But I just released the first episode of a behind-the-scenes video diary of a new actual play that I'm producing called Valiant Adventures, which is going to be using the Tales of the Valiant system. And it is also going to be an interactive stream where players can help, the audience can help influence the dice rolls. I have spoken to a wonderful site, 3D Dice. They have a Twitch extension that allows people to use their channel points to activate certain roles for players should they need them. So that's going to be a fun interactive element to it. And it's also a way for me to play 5e without supporting Wizards of the Coast. So look for Valiant Adventures on everything. It's no spaces or anything. It's the same handle across all platforms. Subscribe, share, like, all those things. That's kind of the thing I'm pushing right now. And I only just realized that you're in the same state as me, dude. So we should actually meet one time. Yeah.
Where if you don't mind, we'll talk off video, because that's really cool. I don't really know that many people out in.
Well, I mean, you're a Jersey guy, so I relate to that. So.
Well, I'm not in Jersey anymore.
Oh, okay. You had me confused.
I grew up in Jersey. Yeah, no, I'm.
Which is most of my life.
Yeah, born and raised Seaside Heights.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, okay, cool.
I actually live in Washington State now.
Okay, that's a little far.
Yeah, near the Canadian border,
I should have figured that out when there's daylight in your window.
Yeah, and this will be the case until almost 10 o'clock tonight. I will have daylight till 10 p.m., which is why I have blackout curtains and really thick blinds across the entire house.
This is me being dumb because my brain is fried from so much video editing today.
I've been out here for 20 years, but the Jersey hasn't left me. I'm still very much East
It never
Coast.
will.
Yeah, and it makes life interesting, to say the least. I remember my first week out here, I made a poor coffee person cry by accident, on purpose on accident. I asked for a large black coffee, and they kept asking me what I meant. And I got to the point where it's like, I ran out of explanations, so I said, look, coffee. Take coffee in pot, hold pot, grab cup, big cup, biggest cup you have. Pour coffee in cup, put lid on cup, hand cup. Me give money. And the girl in this little coffee stand started crying. And I felt like an asshole. And I'm like, what are you crying about? And of course I handled it completely the East Coast way. Like, what's your problem? What's going on here?
What's your problem?
Yeah, what is your problem? Not what did I do? Because on the East Coast, it's never us. fuck that. It's something to do with you. So what's your damage? What's your malfunction here? And that just made it worse. And my mom, this is back when I was still talking with my parents, my mom is sitting in the passenger seat. You can't do that out here. You have to be nice to people. I'm like, I am being nice.
When did you ask for pork roll?
Okay, so I ended up leaving a restaurant in the morning because they didn't have it. And I was just like, well, there's nothing else I want here. So F this, I'm out.
Right.
And they tried explaining to me that a slice of ham would be just the same thing. And I'm like, no, it totally isn't.
No, Taylor ham is not the same.
Yeah. So
don't try and tell me otherwise.
So I had actually paid something like $60 or $80 years ago to have a 5-pound log shipped to me from the producers of Taylor Ham. I went to the grocery store, had it sliced. I went to the grocery store. I had them slice it to the right thickness, and they weren't getting it. So I was like, can I just do it? I worked in the deli for like 5 years. It'll take me 2 seconds. It's a number 3 and 3.2 on your slicer. Just dial it to that. And they're like looking at it like, I don't know what 3.2. I was anyway. So I get this 5-pound log sliced up. I go back to my apartment and I called everybody I knew in Washington that I had to explain what pork roll was to and didn't get it. And I made everybody a pork roll, egg, and cheese on a Kaiser roll. And I did that for 3 days straight. Like, all I ate was pork roll.
That, folks, is how you turn a failure into a success. Brought it around full circle.
Yeah. Once again. Alrighty. Well,
I'm the Dragon X. You can find me on TikTok. Also, you can find me on Sunday nights at twitch.tv/improvgm. We play masks every Sunday night. Kind of.
It's a great show. I love you guys on that. It's
Thank you.
much fun. Nessa makes me laugh every single time I watch that show.
Nessa can just blink her eyes and I am in hysterics. She is the funniest, most amazing person I have had the pleasure of playing games with in my life. I love Nessa. So,
well,
yeah. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, everybody, thanks for watching, and we will be back again next week with another episode and another starting topic that we will quickly meander away from, but somehow always circle back to by the end of the show. Have a good night, everybody.